Nzimande addressing the media.
This is a statement, government statement, on the 2017 fee support to students from poor, working and middle-class families. Our public universities are a significant national asset. They empower the next generation with skills and knowledge and contribute significantly to the ability of our economy to compete globally through innovative and appropriate research. Our universities currently face serious challenges in terms of funding. At the same time, large numbers of South Africans are currently finding it difficult to access post-school education because of the financial challenges they as individuals or as families face. Government is aware of these challenges and takes them very seriously. Indeed, government remains firmly committed to progressively realize free post-school education for the poor and working class, as called for by our Constitution, and to assist middle-class families who are unable to pay. This is demonstrated by, amongst other things, the creation of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into higher education and training funding, which includes universities and technical and vocational education and training colleges, which we call TVET colleges, as well as the substantial increases in funding to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, since 2010. The task of the Presidential Commission is to advise on systemic and long-term measures to achieve a far-reaching reconstitution of the entire post-school education and training funding system, with a particular focus, of course, on student funding, thereby enabling South Africans to access higher education, even if they come from poor and working class families. The Presidential Commission recommendations will hopefully also contribute significantly to building and strengthening our universities and TVET colleges, and the Commission should be allowed to complete its vitally important task. In the interim, while we all wait for the recommendations of this Commission, our university system has to continue functioning, as well as our TVET college system, producing skills for the economy and empowering young South Africans and students from countries around the world, in particular the SADC community. Currently, our universities face an extremely difficult financial situation. The effects of last year's moratorium on fee adjustments and the extra costs associated with insourcing have both added to these challenges. Our immediate and pressing task is to ensure that as we continue to improve access to post-school education and strengthen the quality of learning and teaching, we do not erode the financial sustainability of the sector. Our economy is currently weak and our fiscal position perilous. The tax burden has been rising in recent years, and we must preserve the fiscal space to fund government's policy agenda in future years, and the Minister of Finance concurs on this. This means that any funding government mobilizes to support the pressing challenges in higher education, it would need to reprioritize from other government programs. We understand the legitimate student concerns about the affordability of university education. At the same time, we need to ensure that those who can afford to pay must pay. Equally important, the post-school budget has to cover students in technical and vocational education and training institutions, while we also face the challenge of building a community college sector to provide educational alternatives for 18 million South Africans who are unable to study at university. In other words, our job as government requires a number of very delicate balancing acts. To achieve our objectives, we must continue arguing for as significant a budget allocation as possible for post-school education. Indeed, a look at this year's budget shows that this sector received the largest increase in funding of any government department. Higher education and training this year received an additional 18% for 2016-2017, with an average annual increase of 9.8% across the medium-term expenditure framework period up till 2018 into 2019. From 42 billion rand in the 2015-16 financial year, the department's budget is set to rise to 55.3 billion in 2018-2019. Government has this year provided 1.9 billion of the 2.3 billion shortfall resulting from the subsidization of the 2016 university fee increase. More than 4.5 billion rands in the 2016-2017 financial year has been reprioritized to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. If you add the other 10 billion in the hands of NSFAS, we are talking this year of 14.5 billion rands for NSFAS by government. Expanded funding is targeted to support 205,000 students entering universities for the first time or continuing this year, and a further 200,000 students at TVET colleges. This means that a total of 405,000 students would receive government support to access universities and colleges in 2016. The National Skills Fund has allocated, this is now in addition to NSFAS, has allocated 1.393 billion rand in 2016 towards funding undergraduate and postgraduate bursaries in scarce and critical skills. This funding is directed at meeting the full cost of study for over 13,500 undergraduate and 1,200 postgraduate students enrolled in programs at our 26 public universities. It's a significant amount of money that sometimes the media doesn't write about, because this is in addition to NSFAS that we have got bursaries for students who are in critical and scarce skills to the tune of just under 1.4 billion. In addition, and perhaps most importantly, we must also ensure that we strengthen and empower those sectors which are charged with training and skilling people, either who choose not to go to university or who do not have the opportunity, but nevertheless must be assisted to become useful contributors to the economy. To support this aim, the National Skills Fund, again, has allocated 626 million in 2016 towards supporting TVET college students in occupational programs with a specific emphasis on occupations in high demand, and 1.237 billion rands towards funding students in workplace-based learning. This is above the amount of money we give to NSFAS for TVET college students. Artisan development is also key on our agenda to address the National Development Plan target of producing 30,000 artisans per annum by 2030. Dependent on the artisan trade, it costs between 350,000 to 400,000 over a period of 3 years to train an artisan. This year, the target is to register 30,750 new artisan learners, which will amount to approximately 4.6 billion rand in artisan learner grant funding through the Sector Education and Training Authorities, the SETAs. It is indeed a fine balancing act, and we must all participate, whether at the national level in university administrations or college administration or as student leaders, because it is the nature of balancing acts that if one falls, all fall. Last month, I received recommendations from the Council on Higher Education on university fees for 2017. I have studied these recommendations, consulted with university vice chancellors and council chairs, various student organizations, organized labor, faith communities, political organizations, and government. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the CHE for the work they've done in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, the issues at stake are complex, and there are differing opinions and arguments across the system. The CHA argued for a consumer price index-based fee adjustment for 2017, while many university leaders have made a strong case that an 8% agreement or adjustment, which is CPI plus 2%, is essential to cover what is normally known as the higher education price index, which is usually CPI plus 2. On the other hand, some students have called for a moratorium on all fee adjustments until the outcome of the Presidential Commission is announced, whilst others are supporting government's measures to assist students from poor working and middle-class families, which includes what is sometimes called the missing middle. Currently, the authority for determining fee adjustments resides with university councils. The CHE has suggested, excuse me, to their leadership that the system will be best served by a national approach to this issue. However, at the same time, we do recognize the differentiated nature of the system, and then that a one-size-fits-all approach may not lead to sustainability in the system over the long run. I must just underline here that the authority to set fees rests with university councils, not with the minister. Government is alive to the legitimate cries of students regarding fees and to those of the universities who must continue to pay for specialist books and equipment in foreign currency and ensure that academic support and service staff are adequately remunerated for their work. As we wrestle with how to respond comprehensively, the equally critical building and transforming of our post-apartheid universities and colleges has to be supported. Starving our universities and colleges of funding is not the way to go, which is effectively what another across-the-board fee rise moratorium against the current fiscal backdrop would mean at this point. While the Presidential Commission does its important work in developing proposals for a long-term funding model, universities and colleges will not be able to operate with less funds than what they already have. Everything is more expensive today than it was this time last year. Rates have gone up, whether it's electricity or for water, and many other cost of living related items. That is the reality of inflation. We've looked at the challenges at hand from all sides and have concluded that the best approach would be to allow universities individually to determine the level of increase that their institutions will require to ensure that they continue to operate effectively and at least maintain existing quality, with the caution that this has to also take into account affordability to students and therefore has to be transparent, reasonable, and related to inflation-linked adjustments. Our recommendation is that the fee adjustment should not go above 8%. To ensure that Such inflation-linked fee adjustments on the 2015 fee baseline are affordable to financially needy students. Government is committing to finding the resources to support children of all poor, working and middle-class families, those with a household income of up to 600,000 rand per annum, with subsidy funding to cover the gap between the 2015 fee and the adjusted 27 fee at their institution. This will be done for fee increments up to 8%. This will in effect mean that all NSFAS qualifying students, as well as the so-called missing middle, that is, students whose families earn above the NSFAS threshold but who are unable to support their children to access higher education, will experience a no-fee increase in 2017. All those categories of students. Government will pay for the fee adjustment, which means the taxpayer will pay for the fee adjustment. This will bring huge relief to nurses, teachers, police, social workers, and other parents who work in occupations that do not earn huge salaries and who have children at university. This will apply to students at universities and TVET colleges this time around. Administrative mechanisms will be developed and students informed on how to apply for the gap funding grant before the end of this academic year. There are many students from upper middle class and well-off families, as well as students on full company bursaries in our institutions who can afford to pay the adjusted 2017 fees, and we expect them to do so. It is very unclear, for instance, to government, why families who can afford private schools in this country should, under the current circumstances, be receiving further state subsidies for their children at universities. To subsidize these students would require taking funding from the poor to support cheaper higher education for the wealthy, which is not justifiable in a context of inequality in our country. We cannot subsidize the child of a cleaner or unemployed person in the same way as we subsidize the child of a highly paid advocate or investment banker, for instance. While NSFAS will continue to provide loans and bursaries to poor students, the Department of Higher Education and Training and universities will continue to mobilize institutional and private sector financial support to enable affordable financial aid options for the missing middle students. We're fairly advanced, in fact, with investigating a system that will also assist students from the missing middle to actually access funding for university and college education. I have constituted then to this effect the Ministerial Task Team on funding support for the poor and missing middle students, which is developing a model that will be tested in 2017 to provide affordable support to these students. We will continue to look for other ways of supporting financially needy students not covered by NSFAS, whilst a long-term solution is being developed to raise sufficient funding from the public sector, the private sector, and other sources to fund missing middle students at universities and TVET colleges. Universities must urgently, effectively, and comprehensively advance our shared transformation as articulated in the 2015 Durban Statement on Transformation and provide annual reports on their progress, as we strongly believe that whilst it is legitimate to focus on issues of student fees, other aspects of transformation of universities must not lag behind. Moreover, universities are also expected to pay all of their staff, both permanent and contracted, a fair living wage. I thank you.